Hey everyone, Kelli Jaecks here. And as you've been following me, you know I'm doing a small series this fall on women and their sexual health, particularly those of us who are menopausal, in premenopause, or postmenopausal. There's a lot of different things that change and happen in a woman's body, and I get so many questions on through my blogs and my email blasts about intimate wellness, sexual health. So this is the why I'm doing this. And today I'm so excited because my guest is Dr. Evelin Dacker, and she and I have known each other for a few years because we live in the same hometown, home city in Oregon. But I asked Dr. Dacker here today because she is very sex positive in her approach to women and wellness. So, with that, I would love you, Evelyn, to give us a little bit about yourself and what you do in your
Great.
practice.
Hi, um, I'm Evelin Dacker, and I am a board certified family physician who does primary care, but my specialty really is in women's health. And since I work so much with women of all stages of life, and also being in that very postmenopausal age, I really specialize a lot in sexuality and sexual health. Sex positive kind of is a big umbrella term, which means that really it's like I don't shy away from sexuality. I bring it up as part of what we do as human beings and part of the importance in our lives, how it plays in our lives, not only in our relationships with others, but in our relationship with our own body. Uh, a lot of the work that I do, like when people think of sex positive, it doesn't mean that I promote sex with other people. It doesn't mean that, I think that everybody should be having sex, but I really see it as a fundamental life energy that we all have that actually is the reasons why we're here on this planet and what continues our reproduction with of our species. So I think it's a very fundamental life we have. And I also find that sexuality could really be a portal to our embodiment. And one of the things I mean by that is that so much of us lives in our head and in our brain. We think a lot, we're anxious a lot, and then we come to the doctor when we're sick and when our body is crying out for something or something isn't working. And it's really hard for people to get into their body. And sexuality is this portal that we can use to get into our bodies, into ourselves, and then discover a huge world around us.
Wow,
So, but
that's
yeah, but
great.
yeah. So when I say like sex positive, really it means that I believe that sexuality is something important to our humanness and to our functioning in our body and with other people.
Wow, I love that. I love that definition of that. Can you tell us, Evelyn, like when you see a woman who is struggling with her sexual self, maybe she's menopausal,
Mhm.
maybe she's not, but what are the kind of things you see in your practice that women are telling you about the changes in their sexual life?
Well, I think the number one reason that women come to talk about sexuality, if I don't bring it up, is usually lack of libido and changes in libido and understanding that women tend to have a different cycle of libido than men do. And of course, so much what we study and think about libido is based on male sexuality, which is definitely based on the testosterone hormone.
Right.
Excuse me, and not excuse me, and not estrogen,
Right, which
and
is our female hormone
which is
mainly.
the female hormone. And it really, the shifts in estrogen that we have, not even just through our lifetime, but through our monthly cycle when we have one, and then through each decade, really shifts how our kind of approach and our reality with our sexuality, as does whatever's going outside in our life. So much more plays a role in our sexuality that we need to address. So that's why there's not like one great pill that just works for every woman, like it's for
Whoa,
men.
too bad. Like there is one for men, right?
Yeah, yeah. And and so like yes, libido is a big issue. Pain could be a big issue, vaginal pain, but also just one's enjoyment and what is meaningful around having a sexual presence within your body and within your partnership with anybody else. A lot of what I deal with, but a lot of times, like, I actually bring it up to my patients because a lot of people are very shy to talk about it. And I really talk a lot about, like, what is your joy in your body? What brings you pleasure? Are you having pleasure? Is your sexuality, either with yourself or with any other person, satisfying to you? And that's a very important clue to me. Like, that answer is so important. It tells me so much.
Right. I love that because it kind of opens it up to not just you and a partner, but you
Mhm.
and your own sexuality within your own self, your own pleasure of yourself too. I really love that because I think often women are too they're dissatisfied with their own body image as they're aging. They're dissatisfied, or their sex drive may go away or wane because of the hormonal changes. And I'm wondering, is that the kind of thing that you see in your practice? And what do you counsel women?
Yes, that is what I see in my practice. And that is a lot of the things that I address. Specifically, when a woman comes to me and talks about low libido, saying, "Oh my gosh, it used to be so good, either earlier in my marriage or when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, or now I'm postmenopausal, like, what can I do for it?" The first thing I often talk about is, like, what is your self-pleasure practice? And I don't mean just masturbation when I talk about self-pleasure. I really talk about, like, do you get pleasure out of looking at your face? Or do you get pleasure out of eating some wonderful meal? Do you get pleasure out of holding hands or just touch? Like, really go first, starting with, like, what brings one pleasure? And can then that be integrated from getting outside of your head? Again, because it's really about getting embodied, about getting into your body and what could get us back into our body. And the more I find that women could get into their bodies, the more
Mhm.
that they get more in tune with their sexuality, regardless of the libido.
That is really interesting because, in chapter 10 of my book, Martinis and Menopause, I talk
Hmm.
about strategies and tips to, jumpstart your sexual
Hmm.
self. And one of the tips is getting in tune with your senses. What pleases you when
Hmm.
you look
Hmm.
at it in your room, in your house? What smells make you happy? What sounds are soothing and sensual to you?
Hmm.
And so that is so interesting to hear you say that. I had never put it right in that direction, that actually is so important to
Hmm.
ground into yourself, your
Hmm.
own sexual self. Can you talk a bit about why it's important? Why do you think it's important that a woman is engaged with her own sensual self?
Well, it's the way that we are in touch with our bodies. And, one thing that I really want to address, that, sometimes when we're talking about sex positivity and all these great things, we forget to address, is trauma. A lot of women have trauma, either psychological or physical, that may or may not be related to our sexuality, but can be related to our bodies. So by becoming more embodied, by getting into our own self-pleasure in our own bodies, it really helps heal that trauma and helps address it. So I really, a lot of my work is helping women accept themselves, like women who are heavy, or women whose bodies have changed through surgery, or women who have lost relationships, or whatever stories that exist in our head that then we carry in our body. So the more we could get into our body and recognize our own value and our own beauty, the better we are able to actually then express it with another person and enjoy that expression with another person.
Wow, I love that. It's pretty mind blowing that
Mm.
I do believe that too, but to hear you saying that, how trauma gets carried in our bodies. Um, yeah, I once had a practitioner who was an acupuncturist, and I was going to the acupuncturist because of my high stress levels during my perimenopausal years, and it really
Mm-hmm.
helped so much with
Mm-hmm.
lowering my stress. But at one point when she was needling me, I made a grimace or a sound or something like a ah, and she goes, "What is that?" And I said, "That is my divorce."
Oh, mm-hmm.
Like it just was so clear
Mm-hmm.
where my body was holding that particular trauma. So to
Mm-hmm.
hear you say that is really, I think, freeing for women, because we all have trauma. This year alone,
Oh
I
my
believe
God.
we lived through so much trauma just of what's happening in our world. So that focus on trauma is, and how then does getting in touch with our bodies help us at least begin to address the trauma or begin to grow into a more sex positive person?
And that's really multifactorial because trauma is such a big topic, and it like there's no me alone could never just I don't have a magic wand. I wish I
Right.
did. But
Yeah.
like once you start recognizing where your body holds it and how it holds it, and then being able to release it and integrate it, then you really are able to come into oneself as a full person, a fuller person. And there's something really beautiful that happens, I think, during the perimenopause and menopausal years that allows us to better integrate some of these stories in our lives, or I have found that. And maybe it's the balancing of the hormones. Like, sure, the libido may be gone, but you're able to better balance yourself and integrate yourself. So honestly, I find that some of the women that have the best sex lives and the best sexuality are postmenopausal women because they've done some of this work. And yeah, I mean, I have friends and patients into their 60s that are having beautiful, wonderful, really yummy sexual relationships with their partners and with themselves, which is very different than somebody in their 30s or 40s who just thinks that, oh, I have to perform for someone else. And once we make that shift into recognizing how important it is for us to be in our bodies and how much better we're able to then be with others. So, yes, there's issues like dryness, pain, lack of libido, but there really is so many things that one can do that actually make all of that better.
That is really a message of hope right there.
Oh, so much. And one of the things that I like to tell people, it's interesting, and I'll just do a little personal disclosure. I actually have been I use my own personal life to guide me, and so I'm very open about things. And I just had a hysterectomy, and I am not able to have, any vaginal penetration for 6 weeks. And so I really, instead of being like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my partner, instead I'm like, wow, this is really exciting because now we could figure out other things. Like it gives us this opportunity to learn each other in a different way. And I find that is so helpful for women when it's like, oh, I don't really penetration hurts or I don't really like it. I'm like, oh, that's so great. You could actually start exploring something else. You could start exploring breathing or touch. And I mean, people used to hear that all the time, but like, there's nothing more beautiful than a jar of coconut oil after a nice bath with your partner. And, just like touching each other, really getting to know each other's bodies. And if you're feeling better about your own body and if you know what you like,
Yeah.
then it's such a great practice to bring something new and exciting to that relationship. It doesn't always have to be vaginal penetration. It doesn't always have to be like penis and vagina sex to equal sexuality and closeness and intimacy.
Right. Again, like that's so hopeful, because it's true. The libido may go down while we age, but that the opportunity for sensuality doesn't go away, right?
And for play, and for
And
play.
play and pleasure and wanting to feel good, all of
Mhm.
that, we kind of like need to blow up this vision of what is sex.
Very much so, yes.
Right. It is not just vaginal penetration. Like that,
Hmm.
sex is so much more than that. And I think
Hmm.
that's also a sex positive message that sounds like your patients are so fortunate to have you. Is there any last thing you would like to say on this issue before we close out the interview today?
Just I really think that instead of seeing lack of libido or pain, and it's so easy to go down this dark road of feeling like you lost something of yourself when things shift. It's really taking that as an opportunity to learn yourself a little bit more, taking that opportunity to really discover and figure out what else brings you pleasure and where else you can move to, because the possibilities are absolutely endless. There's so much out there, and so much for couples to explore and play with, that it's not an end. It could really be very much a beginning.
Oh, great. That's so wonderful. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Evelin Dacker. We have just so enjoyed having you. And if anyone would like to get a hold of you, is it all right if I put
Yeah.
a number or an email in the show notes for us?
Yes, of course. People could get in touch with me.
Okay, well, thank you. I know you've done a world of good just for this little bit of piece that we've had of you. And I say happy healing and thanks for all you're doing in the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.